Now, in the rest of chapter 8, remember things started to ramp up and heat up in the conflict with the Pharisees and scribes in chapter 7, and then they had that night in between. Now they're back in the temple. Now it's going to be ratcheted up to a whole new level in the rest of chapter 8. This is a difficult confrontation that's going to take place. So there are a lot of verses here. Let's just hit and miss a couple of these critical points. Jump down to verse 19. Then said they unto him, Where is thy Father? Jesus answered, Ye neither know me nor my Father. If ye had known me, ye should have known my Father also. Beautiful invitation to us that when we come to know the Savior, we're coming to know God the Father. Look at verse 28. Then said Jesus unto them, When ye have lifted up the Son of Man, then shall ye know that I am he, and that I do nothing of myself, but as my Father hath taught me, I speak these things. You'll see that phrase, I am he. You'll see it in verse 24. We had it right there in verse 28. Do you notice the word he is in italics? That's the King James translator's way of signaling to us that that word didn't exist in the Greek manuscripts. They're adding it, or they're making an edit here to make it read more smoothly in English. The Greek text is ego eimi, I am, which when you read the Greek Old Testament called the Septuagint, when Moses is talking to the Lord in the burning bush, he asks him, when I go into Egypt to address the people, who should I tell them sent me? Whose errand am I on? And God's answer is, in the Greek Old Testament version, Septuagint, is ego eimi, I am. It's pretty profound here in this temple setting when he's saying ego eimi, not because he's not speaking Greek, he's speaking Aramaic. But it's very clear the connection that he's making with the God of the Old Testament, Jehovah, being himself.
The word Yahweh in Hebrew, which we know as Jehovah, is in some ways translated as I am, the self-existing one. So the Jews would have known exactly what he's talking about. And we don't always get that clearly through the translation of our English scriptures. Jesus is saying, I am. And this is a super important verse, Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. Moses, who's this like premier prophet the Jews love, they always want to follow him, but had they stopped to ask, who was Moses following? As when Moses, who was sent out, Tyler's already talked about the word sent. Moses was sent, apostle, to go deliver the people. Who sent him? Moses asks, who are you? Under what name and authority will I go present myself? I am, or in Hebrew, Jehovah, Yahweh, the self-existing one. Very, very powerful. The scriptures are so exciting.
It's beautiful, the layers. And then you go to verse 29, and he that sent me is with me. The Father hath not left me alone, for I do always those things that please him. He throws that in there again. I'm not on my own errand. I'm doing that which will please God. What a beautiful pattern for each of us to try to emulate.
So he goes on, let's jump down to verse 56. Because this whole debate about the identity of Jesus and who his father is. And they really like the idea of Abraham. Jesus says, your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. Then said the Jews unto him, thou art not yet 50 years old, and hast thou seen Abraham? Jesus said unto them, verily, verily, I say unto you, before Abraham was, I am.
This is beautiful, highly significant. And as a side note here, sometimes people pay a lot of attention to the punctuation. So notice how you read it. Before Abraham was, then there's a comma, I am. keep in mind that the commas, the punctuation, the capitalization, the versification, that is all added by King James translators. Because if you look at all of the Greek texts, there's not a punctuation mark. There's not a dividing element in the text. It's all capital letters, all one big long run-on sentence in most of those earliest manuscripts of the Greek New Testament. So watch what happens if you move the comma back one word, which 1611, the KJV translators put it where they did. What if we move it back one word? Listen. Before Abraham was I am. That idea of you're putting all of your stock in being children of Abraham, thinking that's going to save you, but you're really growing up to become like the father that you've chosen, the devil. But before Abraham was Jehovah, and he's clearly indicating himself in some fashion. We know that because of their response. Verse 59, then took they up stones to cast at him, but Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple, going through the midst of them, and so passed by. It's not his hour to be slain, and he will not be slain by stoning. It's prophesied he will be lifted up and crucified. And so he miraculously is able to escape out of the midst of this people. So as we come to the close of this first episode for this week, let's reemphasize this idea that we are given the privilege to be a part of this classroom as students of the master teacher through our study of the New Testament this year. What a privilege to get to watch Jesus interacting with people and to learn from him and to plead with God to help us in our search for knowledge, because we believe him when he says, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. That's our hope, to come to know Jesus ultimately, because later on in John 14, he's going to tell them, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He is the truth. And if you put it in that context, we shall come to know not just true things, but we'll come to know the embodiment of truth, which is Jesus Christ himself. And the truth, Jesus, will make us free.